Alright guys, in today's video we are going to have a fun conversation and discussion about the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Project Scarlett. Now what we are going to be discussing today are two different quotes. One that comes from Tom Warren from The Verge. He is the individual there that covers all things Microsoft. And the other quote comes from Jason Schreier, who is a known insider who has a very solid track record. And the reason why we're going to be going over both of these quotes is because they are conflicting with one another, but they both have to do with the same thing, that being PlayStation 5 versus Microsoft's Project Scarlett. Now, it's no secret that as we go into 2020, this conversation is going to ramp up big time, and regardless of what anybody wants to say, there is going to be a pretty intense competition, I guess is the way I would put it, between these two consoles. People are going to be paying very close attention to every move that each console manufacturer makes, because there's a lot of people who want to tell you that power doesn't matter, and while I do agree in the grand scheme of things, power doesn't matter nearly as much as some want to believe it does or it will going into 2020. The truth is the games come before everything, but it's still going to make for some very interesting and very entertaining conversation to see how Sony handles the PlayStation 5 versus how Microsoft handles Project Scarlett. Now, the reason why I'm saying all of this is because yesterday, I'm sure as many of you know, we got that screenshot that just seemingly came out of nowhere where it revealed two PlayStation 5 dev kits, and the image was very high quality, and it may have even revealed what a lot of people are saying is the DualShock 5. And it just kind of got the conversation going once again about the PlayStation 5. Meanwhile, there's absolutely nothing going on with Microsoft and Project Scarlett. In fact, there's been so little conversation that it seems to me that it would be fair to say some people maybe even forget that it's a thing, right? And I'm not saying that to, dig at them or anything, but it's just they've been so quiet. I don't even think the fans could argue that. And so a lot of people are out here wondering, why is this? Why is Microsoft being so quiet? The conversation has been dominated by PlayStation and the PS5. And within that thread yesterday, the thread underneath the actual image itself, somebody asked the question, or they said, I should say, still wondering about Scarlett dev kits. Basically just saying, where are the Project Scarlett dev kits? Why haven't we seen them? Why is this like the third time we're hearing about or seeing the PlayStation 5 dev kits, but we haven't heard a peep about Project Scarlett? And so Tom Warren from The Verge actually responded, and this is what he had to say. Hardly anyone has them, and they're nowhere near final. That's why you're hearing a lot of nonsense about them not being powerful, etc. Microsoft wants to surprise Sony this time. So that is a very loaded response, honestly, and I don't think it's hard to figure out what he's trying to say there. Essentially what he's saying is that Microsoft has been so quiet and they're playing everything so close to the chest because they want to catch Sony off guard. Now, this is a surprising statement to me because that absolutely does not sound like Microsoft to me. Microsoft, or more specifically the Xbox division and the way that they have been doing things, the way that they have been running things over the past couple of years, has been, I guess we could say, very non-aggressive towards their competition. At least that's how I have interpreted it. Now, it seems that they are planning on being competitive against things like Google Stadia, and we know that just by them creating a console with Project Scarlett, they are, no matter what, being somewhat competitive with Sony. But I think most of you understand what I'm saying here. That, to me, just doesn't sound like Microsoft. They have been the nice guys, right? Phil Spencer is the nice guy in gaming, and he has made it pretty clear that they're not trying to take the crown away from anybody. They're not trying to be number one. At least I would say that their actions and everything that they've been doing over the past couple years would dictate that, right? They just are not doing the things. I mean, they went in pretty hard with the Xbox One X. I will admit that. I'll give them that credit. In that area, they were pretty competitive. They were pretty aggressive, and they did come out on top with the world's most powerful console. But other than that, there was pretty much nothing else, right? And so we have a follow-up response, or a conflicting response, I guess is the best way to put it, that comes from Jason Schreier. And this actually comes from Reset Error, where there was people having a conversation and a thread about this, trying to figure out, like, what is Tom Warren trying to say here? You know, is this actually true? Is this really the case? Does Microsoft have some secret, massive, diabolical plan that's going to just annihilate the PlayStation 5 that nobody knows about? And so, what Jason Schreier says here pretty much completely negates, if you believe what he's saying here, everything that Tom Warren is insinuating with his response. And so this is what Jason Schreier had to say. Not sure if the trying to surprise Sony part is quite right. Common sense would suggest that, like with the Xbox One, Microsoft is just running behind schedule and will launch pretty hot. But I've talked to a few third-party developers who said that they were frustrated by the lack of info on Scarlett, especially compared to Prospero. So there's a lot of things to go over in what he says here in this quote. The first is obviously at the end here that he's confirming that Prospero is in fact the code name for the PlayStation 5 dev kit. Now keep in mind, the only other time we heard this, as far as I remember anyway, was from a supposed leaker or from Gizmodo. I forget exactly where it came from, but I know it came from a website where they said they couldn't reveal their source. And one of the things that they said is that this is going to be the biggest jump, like in console history, that we've ever seen in terms of raw power and compute power. And a lot of people were unsure of whether or not they could believe this. They didn't know if they could believe that the dev kit name was actually Prospero. And so this is, in a way, Jason Schreier kind of backing that up and confirming that, yeah, what we heard from that supposed leaker sounds like it was true. It was the real deal. But that's getting a little bit off topic here. Focusing on what he has to say here about Project Scarlett, it's literally the exact opposite, and in my opinion, the much more likely scenario regarding Project Scarlett, where he says he's not sure about the trying to surprise Sony part, where he's downplaying the idea of Microsoft being able to surprise Sony. I mean, guys, this is the problem, right? And I feel like these two conflicting quotes, I think, really highlight the different stances that people have, the different perspectives, I should say, that people have in regards to PlayStation and Xbox. For a long time, as somebody who used to be an Xbox fan, I was waiting for that moment from Xbox, right? I was waiting for them to just get up and say, you know what, we're going to take it right to Sony, and we're going to get in their face, and we're going to get aggressive, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to, meet them head on and stand against them, go toe-to-toe with them. And that just didn't happen. And a lot of people started to tell me that just wait till next gen, MBG. Just wait till next gen. Wait till the next generation of console starts. Then you're going to see it. And I just thought to myself, like, you're kidding me, right? Like, you expect me to wait, like, multiple years just for them to actually be competitive? Yeah, no thanks. And I just pieced out, you know what I mean? And I don't regret that at all. In fact, it was the best thing I ever did in terms of my gaming life, right? And and I've been following Microsoft. You guys know this. I've been following Microsoft to see, like, we just recently watched XO19. We watched E3 this year. And I'll tell you right now, the idea that Microsoft is this company right now that's secretly building this monster of a console that's just going to annihilate the PlayStation 5, and that they have these secret plans that they're keeping it close to the chest so that way they can just come out next year at E3 and surprise everybody and catch everybody off guard, including Sony themselves. Listen, it's not going to happen. And if I'm wrong, I will be happy to be wrong. But that's not what Xbox is these days. Okay, that's just not Xbox. So what Jason Schreier here is saying sounds a lot to me like the Xbox I've come to know the past couple of years. Talking about them, he says like common sense would suggest that just like with the Xbox One, they're running behind schedule. And that's why developers right now don't have Project Scarlett dev kits, to whereas Sony is possibly ahead of schedule. Right? And he's also insinuating or suggesting that there's a chance they're probably going to launch pretty hot. For those who don't know what that means, launching hot just essentially comes down to your product isn't 100% finished and ready to go, but you're putting it out there anyway. Like when a game launches hot, a game that's not 100% finished, maybe has some major flaws, but they're launching anyway, that's what you would consider launching hot. When something's just not 100% ready to go, maybe it's at 90, 80%, and they put it out there, and then they figure they'll keep working on it. Now, I think that a lot of this, of what Jason Schreier is saying here, is much more likely, because again, all you have to do is just look at the way Xbox has conducted themselves over the past couple years. Does that sound like Microsoft? I mean, as much as I would like to see this, like, I want to believe what Tom Warren is insinuating. I want to believe that that is actually Microsoft's plan, because that would mean greater competition. I want to believe that Microsoft has this big grand plan where they're being super secretive, so that way next year at E3 they come out and they just shock everybody in terms of what they show with the hardware and what they show with the games. And a lot of Xbox fanboys will tell you that that is in fact 100% what's going to happen. And again, I hope they're right, because I would love to see that from Microsoft. I would love to see Microsoft get way more aggressive against Sony and the console space, within the console space, than they have been. But just like Jason Schreier says here, common sense would dictate that that's not the case here. I mean, he says it himself here that he's hearing from third-party developers that they are frustrated with the lack of communication. Now, is that something you hear from developers? Because, is that smart of Microsoft? Is it smart for them, if it's part of their grand plan, to say, we're just going to try to frustrate our developers or third-party developers because we're just going to be completely silent and not reveal anything to them out of fear that they're going to leak stuff, right? I mean, listen, that's not Microsoft's focus. At least I would have a hard time believing it is. I would have a hard time believing that Microsoft's so focused on being secretive against Sony and making sure Sony has no idea of their plans and can't get a whiff of their plans, that they're going to risk upsetting some third-party developers or frustrating them. That just sounds like the dumbest thing in the world to me. I mean, it makes no sense, especially when you listen to how Microsoft says they want to run the Xbox brand, right? It just goes completely against it. So, I know that this is turning into like a ranty conversation, but it's very interesting because these two individuals, okay, like, they know stuff that we do not. Jason Schreier knows stuff. Tom Warren knows stuff that we don't. And hearing this conflict between them, it's kind of like, you have to figure out for yourself, which side do you stand on? Which side do you think is more likely? Do you believe Tom Warren when he says that, they don't want to, or they're going to try to surprise Sony? Like, do you really think that's what Microsoft's trying to do here? Or do you believe Jason Schreier when he says, no, they're just pretty much running behind schedule and they're not, and Sony is essentially ahead of schedule? Well, based off of everything I've seen and heard, based off of even just looking at Sony's stance towards console gaming versus Microsoft's current stance towards console gaming, I'm more inclined to believe Jason Schreier, not just because that's what I want to hear, because, again, it's nice to hear that Sony has it together, and we all know that they're going to do really well going into next gen with the PS5, but frankly, I would love to see the competition from Microsoft. I would love to see them become more aggressive, right? But I just don't know if that's the case here. So that's going to do it for the video, guys. It turned out a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but this is just a very interesting conversation. I've seen a lot of people talking about this, a lot of people commenting on it, and so I'm just trying to kind of highlight these things here and convey the information to you guys so you can come up with your own conclusion. Whose side are you taking here? Are you more inclined to believe what Jason Schreier is saying, or are you more inclined to believe what Tom Warren is saying about these next-gen consoles? Me personally, I'm going to take Jason Schreier on this one. I think it just makes a lot more sense than what Tom Warren's saying. But one thing we do need to end this video on saying is that plans change, and we are still, like 12 months out from these consoles, so a lot could change, and believe me, the conversation is going to get much, much more interesting as we go forward into 2020. So let me know your thoughts about this down in the comments below. Leave the video a like if you did enjoy it or you enjoyed the commentary. Really helps it out. Lets me know you guys enjoyed the content. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.